10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're live.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I want to welcome you to the February 7th, 2011 Morganton City Council meeting. At this time, I'd like to call on Sheldon Stevenson, who would lead us with our invocation.
I think at this time, but especially in this time, the importance of God in our midst, in our work, in our lives, is important. We're told that God is love. I think that love is extended to our city. I think God cares about our city. The city is important to God, especially now with the climate changes and so on. I think that the purity of the water, that we're going to hear about that later, I think, about the purity of the water and the green of the trees and the loveliness of the mountains are important to God and to our work and so on. And in the midst of this infinite space, which we have inherited, eternal timelessness, all of a sudden we're given lives to live. How important, how unique that is, or how important that is, that's true. And some ways, as you think about your work for the city or whatever, you and your life are a gift from God to the city. Can you think about that? Your lives are gifts to do something for the city. God is love, and I think in these times of banging forth Egypt and other places, we're called upon as people of a city like ours to love people who don't even like us, who don't care about us. Somehow we have to have faith that caring for people that don't like us is a power that will do. Now, God gives you difficult work and not enough money to do it. And so yet God counts on us to do good work, to do what we can do for the preciousness of the city and the work that is ours. I think God wants you to enjoy your work. I don't want you to come to work with long faces, but He wants you to feel good about the dynamic of the work that you're doing. It's so fundamental that you like what you do. For our prayer, I would like to have us say together the 23rd Psalm, because it talks about the leading of God. And we all know that, so we can all say it together, all who will do that, the 23rd Psalm. So may we pray the Lord's Prayer. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for His name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for Thou art with me. Thy rod and Thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen.
Thank you, Steve. Introduction of our City Council. On my far right is Dr. Alfred Hamer, City Councilman Forrest Fleming, Steve Sullemeyer, City Attorney. I'm Mel Cohen, your Mayor. Sally Sandys, City Manager. Larry Weston, City Councilman. John Cantrell, City Councilman. Kelly Russell, Recording Secretary, and Becky Brinkley, interpreting for our deaf community. Again, I want to welcome everyone here. Nancy, come over on this side.
You know how to turn it. They didn't bet no money. Look at that spot. Look at this spot.
Want to present you your 30-year pin. Can I get a hug? Because we came about the same time. You can say care.
Thank you.
I appreciate Larry bringing you. Public advocacy issues and strategies. I would like to welcome Ben and Libba Belton. About 10 days ago, we went to Shelby to the Main Street Convention, and they were given an award for their renovation and revitalization of the upstairs of their buildings and 2 condominiums, and it was very impressive performance, very impressive pictures, and it couldn't been given to anybody any more worthy than Ben and Libba Belton. I want to thank you all for what you all have done for our downtown. Greatly appreciate it. You won't say anything, you're welcome to. Okay, thank you a lot. Municipal power?
Did you want to do the consolidation committee?
Oh, Forrest and I will be working with the county on some consolidation of services that we'll be dealing with them on. They're going to name their people tomorrow night.
They are putting together a committee to look at possibilities in consolidated services, and it may also involve other municipalities within the county.
Okay, Forrest, you've agreed, right?
Yes.
Anything on municipal power?
Yes. Dan Brown and I attended a power agency meeting in the last couple of weeks, and the purpose of that meeting was for the power agency to look at projections for rate increases and things that are going to be happening and needs over the next 5, 10, 15 years. And one of the things that was decided at that board meeting is that the electricity staff has been directed to begin looking at the possible restructuring of our debt on the nuclear power plant. And what that would do, hopefully, is to generate some additional savings. And this is not a refinancing for a lower rate, because that has already been done. This would actually be restructuring debt. Currently, the debt is to be paid off in 2019. The plant itself has been relicensed and has a life until 2043. And so, in order to mitigate rate increases at this point, and to try to absorb some of that now, they're going to explore with the local government commission and the rating agencies the possibility of restructuring that. And I'll report back as that progresses.
Very good. Consent agenda, Sally.
The consent agenda before you tonight actually includes 5 items, and those items are considered to be routine in nature. They include minutes from the regular meeting held on January the 3rd, tax releases in the amount of $6,085.57, an approval for contract for law enforcement services to be provided to the ABC Board, the local ABC Board, and the establishment for the advertisement of unpaid real estate taxes, and that would be for April the 6th, 2011. And then a budget amendment to accept a grant that was received from Electricities for $4,000 to fund facade grants in downtown, and would ask that you consider those items in one motion unless somebody would like an item discussed separately.
I'll make the motion that the consent agenda be approved.
Second?
Yeah, we have a motion.
Who made the second?
John.
John. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Okay. Ed, if you don't mind, I'm going to let them go. They've got to go to Mooresville to a long city council meeting. If you don't mind, Kent Lackey with Black and Veatch.
First of all, I want to say thank you very much for allowing me to speak with you tonight. My name is Kent Lackey. I'm the project manager with Black and Veatch that's been helping the city with the wastewater treatment plant project to date. What I wanted to do tonight is talk about kind of a refresher on what the project is about. It's a very significant project for the city. Talk about what we've accomplished to date and where we're going. Just give you a kind of an overall idea of where we are on the project. So we're going to talk about the regulatory compliance issues, what spurred this project, talk about some of the key milestones we've met. Part of that was to develop a long-term plan for the facility, so we'll go through some highlights of that. And then we'll talk about the next phase of the project, which we call Phase 3, and what's going to be occurring during that phase of the project and the schedule for it. And so about a year ago, a little over a year ago, is when this project first started, and really driven by some difficulties with the existing wastewater treatment plant, meeting the current effluent limits under certain operating conditions, as well as some stormwater treatment issues that were present at the site. A key note through the assessment that was done at that point in time, the challenges are primarily age-related, condition of equipment, facilities, things of that sort. Not the inability of the processes or staff, but of the equipment and facilities that were in operation at that time. Really the keys, some hydraulic issues associated with high storm flows and the amount of water that goes through the plant, making treatment very difficult during those storm events. The solids treatment systems, which at a wastewater treatment plant remove the solids out of the water as part of the treatment. A lot of challenges associated with equipment and systems failing, which prevented the ability to remove those solids, which then causes difficulties with the overall treatment process, meeting the limits. And then the stormwater issue that I mentioned. These slides are what was presented a year ago, so really that starting point. And so the general things to remember are that the problems that the plant was seeing is really problems with the plant's ability to meet the limits, none of which represent an immediate risk to public health, but really a challenge meeting the limits that are required to be met by the discharge permit. These types of issues are coming up a lot of these days with older equipment, older systems, other utilities, other cities are seeing very similar issues. So it's not just the city of Morganton. It's becoming more and more common as the state and the federal government really start to focus on more stringent limits, trying to improve water quality, et cetera. So as the plant ages, these things come up and need to be addressed to maintain that level of quality and improve it over time to meet those regulations. And so really an update of where we are. Phase 1 of the project was really to go in and have our team work with your staff and assess the overall facility from beginning to end. What are the issues that are faced in front of us? What are future regulations that may impact the facility as well? And understand the potential costs, the implications that need to be, and things that need to be addressed in the plant. That was completed early last year. That then led into what we call Phase 2, which really consisted of two things. One, developing a long-term plan for the plant, looking at the condition of these systems and equipment as they existed at the time, looking at future regulations, and coming up with the most cost-effective long-term plan to meet those. But also, because of the solids treatment issues at that particular time, which we're struggling, develop a fast-track plan to replace the equipment to bring that up to par so that it can operate and meet the near-term requirements of the plant. The installation of that centrifuge, the equipment has been procured. The construction documents for the installation of the equipment are complete. We actually advertised that this past weekend and would expect to open bids from construction contractors in 30 days and hopefully mid-year have all of the equipment installed and fully operational. The long-term facility plan, which was a fairly extensive study working closely with your staff, has also been completed. We're just tying some loose ends up on the final report. It has been submitted to the state for their review as well. And we'll talk a little bit about the conclusions that come out of that plan. So again, Phase 1, the initial assessment is complete. We did assist the city in negotiating a voluntary order of consent with the state, which really that provides us the ability to make improvements to the plant over a longer period of time without the risk of violations due to the existing permit. So there's very fixed, stringent timelines by which we need to do things, but it relaxes the limits to take that risk of problems during that time period and provides us a little bit more time to do it in a reasonable manner. So that has been successfully negotiated and executed. Phase 2, as I mentioned, the long-term facility plan was completed. I guess last fall as well, we did develop with the city an application for a state revolving fund loan to fund this next Phase 3 project. The city was awarded that loan in October. They award the loans based on a priority ranking schedule, so you earn points based on the type of projects and key aspects of it. And what's important is this project was the #1 rated project in the state during that application process. So they recognized the need, the importance of this project, and the loan amount was fully funded based on what was submitted at that time. As a condition, we had to submit the preliminary engineering report that would outline the details of the project. We did meet that submittal deadline in January, which was pretty tight, but that was met and in the state's hand for their review right now. Again, long-term facility plan, the key results of that were identifying those immediate regulatory needs at the plant to bring the plant back into compliance, the potential future nutrient, and then really looking at a phasing strategy. There's a lot of things that will need to be done at that plant from a condition standpoint and age standpoint, but also looking at future regulations. How do we defer what's possible to minimize the cost up front and come up with a very cost-effective plan as best we can for the city to meet all of those needs? And so that plan was developed, really looking at total life cycle. What we wanted to ensure and what was very important to the city was to make sure that what we built today would not impact the decisions you have later. It would feed into the overall plan for the plant itself and provide the least long-term cost, the minimal life cycle cost for that plant, looking at the next 20 years. And so that's what we did. We developed a plan out 20, and then developed our project now for the near term based on that plan. We looked at a bunch of different nutrient limits suggested by the state, some low numbers, some medium numbers, some high numbers. So with the potential implications that nutrient removal would have to be added at the plant based on some notice provided by the state. We looked at potential processes, a number. The spreadsheet, you can see each column is really another process. So a lot of different processes, determining what would be the most flexible based on the actual limits that could be awarded later, as well as what would be the least life cycle cost, and then determine what that overall process would be, and then use that to kind of drive some of the decision makings on how the plant would progress. We evaluated flow equalization. What that is, as I mentioned earlier, one of the most important things that's happening to the plant is when a storm flow comes, if the collection system is leaking, stormwater can get into the collection system, and then the plant itself can have very high hydraulic loading or very high flow rates associated with rainwater coming to the plant. Generally, you don't want to treat rainwater through the plant because it takes out the capacity that you need for treatment. Addressing in the collection system can be done and needs to be done, but generally takes a lot longer time period just because of the magnitude of the service area and things of that sort. As a stopgap, in order to reduce the flows into the treatment plant, flow equalization is utilized to, in essence, store some of that storm volume, and it allows the treatment plant to perform much better during those storm events. So we looked at methods by which we could build new equalization basins, as well as methods by which we could use some of the existing basins at the plant to try to reduce cost. We also looked at the cost of various upgrades to these facilities at the plant from the beginning to the end to try to address the aging issues at each facility, staging those over time, as well as regulatory issues and the impact that each of those processes have on the ability to meet the regulations and the current limits. Stormwater, I mentioned previously as well. Primarily with the compost facility, there is a stormwater concern that some of the runoff from the plant can enter the rivers untreated. So we've looked at several alternatives in order to eliminate that issue. One, treating that stormwater in the plant itself, or cordoning off the compost area so there is no runoff. So some of those options were looked at. And so I'll talk about kind of the conceptual plan right now. The red squares that you see on the bottom are the current reactors, what we call the main secondary treatment process of the plant. They're the most critical process there. Right now, all the flow goes through one of the reactors. 2 of them are out of service due to age. It was important to try to use those reactors long-term because the concrete is still good, and the cost savings by reusing those reactors could be significant. And so the plan that you're seeing in front of you, the large blue square on the right side, would be new process basins that would replace those reactors ultimately. Could be used for nutrient removal or to go to an alternative, lower operational cost process than what you have now. We will be constructing one of those basins, using it as your flow equalization. It'll be constructed to look like a process basin, so in the future it could be converted to a newer, more effective process basin, and your existing ones would then be used as flow equalization. So really trying to phase that to reduce cost. The other facilities you see, the circle on the left is an existing clarifier that really allows the solids to settle out and clarify the water. That's out of service, going to be rehabilitated. Will increase the performance of the plant and the reliability significantly, so that'll be done as well. The smaller rectangle in the middle is a new blowers for a future disc filter facility that would be needed, or a new disc filter facility that would be needed in the future for nutrient removal. That will go in a future project should nutrient removal be required. And then in the upper left, one concept of the stormwater would be to, in the future, expand that compost area as well. The amount of space under the current roof is limited, and you are running out, so that could be expanded in the future, so that was also looked at. But the key here, looking at our long-term plan that was developed working with your staff, is really reusing those existing basins will be beneficial long-term. And so we were able to reduce the long-term cost based upon that. The compost area, the solution we looked at was to reduce the amount of paved area around the compost. With paved areas, asphalt, concrete, when water hits it, it runs off at, with high volumes, high flow rates. By reducing the amount of area that potentially the compost would be on, we can reduce the amount of flow. And then we're going to pump it to the equalization basin and treat it through the plant. May seem a little odd where we have a high flow event or a high flow issue going to the plant. Why would we be sending more? Well, the cost to cover all the areas is very significant. The cost to cordon it off and put just treatment for compost, very significant, and a lot of O&M. By minimizing the area that we have here and then treating it through the plant, it's a smaller volume currently, and it would leave open other options in the future to composting. If we spend a lot of money right now expanding composting and handling that, that may limit your flexibility in the future to adjust to new regulations that may drive different end solids uses. And so we wanted to leave that open and also minimize the cost in this upfront project. And so that's why this alternative was selected at the end of the day. So here's the current project that will be going into design very shortly. On the right, you can see the one process basin that we're constructing. It will be used as flow equalization. The bottom right is the current reactor that's in service. We're going to upgrade the controls in that reactor. And the center bottom, the horizontal rectangle, that's your existing reactors that are out of service. We're going to convert them so that they could be used more effectively as flow equalization as well. Again, increasing the reliability of the plant during those storm events. Bottom left, the influent pumps and the bar screens will be assessed and replaced as necessary due to age conditions. There are bar screens that are out of service now. The two circles in the center of the page are your solids holding tanks prior to being treated. They're going to have mixers put in so they work more effectively as process basins for the solids and holding basins. The dewatering building is directly above that. We're replacing one centrifuge now for solids treatment. We'll add the second and upgrade the overall building, the electrical, mechanical, so that it'll last for the next 20 years. Then at the top, the compost area, the stormwater collection system that I've talked about, that'll go in under this project as well. The schedule for this project, as I mentioned, we're going to be going into design very shortly. Under the loan process, we have very solid deadlines that we have to meet throughout this process. The design must be complete by December 1 so that we can submit it to the state. We're going to be setting an aggressive schedule to try to bring that in a month earlier, if not more. The sooner that we get it in, the more reliability you have with the overall treatment process. So we're going to be, our team has been looking at trying to save time where we can. But by that December deadline, it then would go to permitting for the state, which takes several months, bidding, really looking at a May or mid-2012 as a construction start date, hopefully at the latest, but that is where it currently is. The construction period, we're looking 12 to 18 months. So middle of 2013 to end of 2013, we would expect the Phase 3 facilities to be completed in service. Our current SOC deadline, our consent order deadline for the plant is in middle of 2014. So based on this schedule, we're hoping to beat it by 6 to 12 months. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
We will start the loan process right away to pay some of your fees,
Well,
correct?
yes and no. We have started the process with the application and the approval, but we will have to wait to get a final rate and everything through the local government commission. Even with this state program, we have to go through the local government commission to do the borrowing, and we will have to have bids in hand. We will have to get to the point where we have construction bids in hand so that we know that we're getting enough money to do the project and take that through. LGC approval will probably take, 60 days is a good estimate, 60 to 75 days. And at that point, we get money. Currently, what we have planned to do and what we showed for the first part of this in this year's budget is we are borrowing that money from the Capital Reserve Fund because it is eligible to be used for water and sewer capital. And when we borrow the money, that will get paid back. And then the sewer fund picks up the debt payments on the low interest loan.
Okay, we'll be borrowing basically $10 million. And you're saying that these improvements will last us about 20 years.
Yeah, we generally, from a wastewater treatment plant standpoint, when we design facilities and equipment, we're really looking for about a 20-year life. Some equipment is a little shorter, it just depends on the equipment, but on average, we're looking for a 20-year life. Some will actually go a little bit longer as well.
So, Sally, what is our payback plan? 20 years? 10 years?
We will talk about that at the time we apply for the loan. We may actually do something a little less than that, maybe 15 years. We'll have to look at the numbers when we get the rate and try to decide. The most recent loans that they did were right around 2% interest, which is pretty good.
Right. But 15 is a reasonable expectation. So we've
Yes.
got 5 years of no debt payments, assuming this life is.
For this project.
For this project, but
The killer is the nutrient removal that Kent has referred to, that currently the state is set up, unless the new General Assembly changes this, to send down those requirements to us in 2015.
That's correct.
Am I right about that date? And then we have to start planning the next, or thinking about it in relationship to this, the next project in order to meet those requirements. Kent showed you medium and low requirements for phosphorus and nitrogen. Tell me when I get astray.
That's correct.
And if the stringent rules that they are talking about now go in, then you are probably looking at somewhere for the city of Morganton with our customer base and our size town and our plant, $40 to $50 million for that only. That is in addition to the $10 million. And I think the estimate for all of North Carolina was how many $1 billion did they estimate? Obviously, this is something that we care very strongly about, that everybody in this community needs to care very strongly about, and we need to be sure that with all these new regulations and requirements, that we are really getting what we need and we are not going too far. That's my soapbox. Because we will have no choice but to meet what they give down to us.
And the other thing to remember is when we looked at phasing this project out, with the understanding there would potentially be another project with nutrient removal in the 5-year time frame, we've tried to defer some improvements or replacement of aged equipment that we felt would last beyond the 5 to 10 year window to that project to try to reduce the cost of this project. So while you saw the map that had a number of facilities highlighted, you can see there's a number of facilities where no work's being done. There will be other equipment that will be aging over time that in the number that Sally had mentioned, the replacement or upgrades of those facilities and that equipment is there. So hypothetically, if the nutrient removal isn't required, there will still be aged equipment systems that will need to be replaced, obviously much less than the dollar amount necessary for nutrient removal. But the key, this project, we're really focusing on addressing the immediate needs, the reasons why the plant is not meeting the current limits, to get it into reliable performance. But while doing it, making sure those processes are going to last. But there are other facilities that will need attention with or without the nutrient removal project in that 5 to 10 year window.
So, as we look toward future costs to our citizens during this 20-year period, we can expect pretty rapid appreciation of rates.
We can expect to take on a lot of debt and pay that through rates.
And there's no way around it.
We can.
Thank you.
What are you estimating that the total cost of the Phase 3 and the 4 project is going to be to the city?
Phase 3 is 10.6, whatever the loan amount is, the cost between engineering, construction, et cetera. Phase 4, I believe, was right around what Sally said, about 40 million. The bulk of that being nutrient removal. Now, bear in mind that number is also based on the current capacity of the plant. Whether that capacity goes up or down is something that can be considered at that time. There is additional capacity in the plant available right now. The amount of capacity that the nutrient removal process is designed for is very important to the overall cost. The other issue, and something that we're trying to get a handle on that will be very important for the city as well, the stormwater issues that I mentioned that are due to leaky collection systems, which are undesirable, of course. That amount of water coming through the plant also greatly impacts the cost of the nutrient removal project. So a way to try to reduce that figure in the future is to try to reduce those stormwater impacts that are occurring in the collection system as well. So, you know, right now there's 5 years, 5 to 10 years before that project theoretically would come forward. It would be important to be looking at that to try to reduce that stormwater flow. Because when we design a treatment plant for the nutrient removal, we've got to look at the flow that comes down every day on the dry days. But then we also have to look at designing it to handle that flow on the wet day. And if the wet day flows are 6, 7 times the dry day flows, you're paying a lot of money for a treatment process that you really don't need. You only have it because you're treating stormwater. If we can drop that down to the wet weather being 3 times, which is more typical, that will greatly reduce the amount of that nutrient removal project. So that's a challenge that, you know, you have some time to start addressing. That could change that number. The numbers we developed are based on similar wet weather issues you have now. So we needed to be conservative looking at that long-term budget to make sure that we knew what that is. But there are opportunities to try to bring that down.
Ken, is it possible the legislature could delay that phase 4 for everybody?
Anything's possible. You know, the nutrient removal, there were certain things they were looking at this year as well that got shelved for a little bit of time. You know, I guess what I'm hearing, because we deal with a lot of of utilities, especially in the western part of the state where I'm primarily focused. And a number of them are under the same scenario and have been put on notice. I would say most of them are to the point that it's not if anymore, it's a matter of when. It's a matter of when and how tight. For good or bad, regulations tend to get more stringent. They very rarely loosen up. And so with the focus on nutrients, the pollution in water bodies, it's not likely it's going to be pushed a long ways out. How DENR and the EPA decide to regulate in time and that process will impact it. But it's coming, eventually. The question is when.
Any other questions of Kent? Thank you, Kent. Appreciate it. Ed Phillips with the Director of the Burke County Travel and Tourism.
Good evening. I'm here tonight to speak to the citizens of Morganton and the City Council and you, Mr. Mayor, and those of the rest of you that are present tonight to introduce myself. First of all, I'm Ed Phillips and Director of the Travel and Tourism Authority. And I wanted to appear before you tonight and give you a little report on what has transpired over the past 12 months in our authority and what's been going on with tourism here in Burke County. First of all, I'd like to give you a little bit of history. The Tourism Development Authority was authorized by the North Carolina General Assembly in July of 2007. We are a 9-member board of directors voting. We have one ex officio member who's the county finance director. We also have a member from Valdez and a member from Morganton, and 3 members that actually collect the occupancy tax. We have one member that represents the Burke County Board of Commissioners, and we also have 2 at-large members. The Burke County Tourism Development Authority is funded by a 6% tax added to hotel, motel, and other lodging bills. Getting a little technical help here. The 6% tax that's added to hotel, motel, and other lodging bills, in 2010, 2011, July 1 through June, we had a budget, and still have a budget, of $269,500. Both Morganton and Valdez receive a portion of the tax revenues for their tourism marketing efforts. It's a combined total of $91,495. And we have a balance of $178,000 that we spend for county-wide marketing. Each year we put in our budget an amount for community grants. These are grants that we give out. Our TDA board votes on grants that are given to folks that are promoting tourism events in the county. And then we also spend the money on advertising and staffing. I'm really pleased to inform everyone that the Burke County Tourism Development Authority was the very first TDA in North Carolina to receive a Golden Leaf grant. We have 14 members of the community that serve on our local Golden Leaf Advisory Committee, and that grant is $328,600 over 2 years. And with the help of that committee and some outside resources, that money will be spent on marketing our entire county, hospitality training for hotel workers, frontline staff, restaurants, bartenders, those folks that greet our visitors when they first come here. We also have money in that grant for program staffing for product development. We actually have a person that is working with our tourism industry in the county to develop businesses, new businesses to serve our tourism economy here, and also working with other businesses to grow and make better decisions. Most of our tourism businesses are small business. They don't have a marketing person on staff, so we have hired someone for the next 2 years with the Golden Leaf money to help us with that. In 2010, the visitor statistics for our visitor center, we had 2,249 visitors. That was over 9 months. Beginning in March of 2011, I'll be able to give you a month-to-month comparison on how that looks to be doing. Inside the visitor center, we have updated exhibits that we transferred back in October. We have an exhibit on the Beanstalk Journey zip line, the Jonas Ridge snow tubing, Lake James, and the Linville Gorge. And those are all, we're always updating those exhibits, and we'll have some more coming out here in the next month or 60 days. A lot of people don't see or feel the impact of tourism, and they don't feel the events or recognize the events that go on in our county. So I thought I'd mention just a few, and I'm sure I left some out that are important to individuals here and in our community, but these are just a few that I wanted to emphasize. In October, we had the Ridge to Bridge Marathon, which started in Jonas Ridge. We had 300 folks enter that 26.2-mile foot race. They came from 22 states and Canada, and they stayed here in our motels and ate in our restaurants and ran primarily in Burke County, a little bit of Caldwell as well. But the Red, White, and Bluegrass Festival had 30,000 plus spectators, according to estimates from those organizers, and that event is going to continue to grow. I'll also mention, and I think, Mr. Mayor, you're aware that the Red, White, and Bluegrass Festival has been named one of the top 20 events in the entire southeast U.S. for the month of July, and that was a very good promotional piece for us. Last year, we had 35 sporting events with literally hundreds of teams participating. I can tell you for 2011, we already have 47 events scheduled here that I'm aware of, and there are more being booked every day, so that's growing. The Foothills Wine Festival in Glen Alpine had approximately 400 attendees last year. That's going to be coming up again in May. We have a regional bridge tournament here. A lot of people don't know about this, but we have 300 to 400 bridge players that come to Morganton 4 times a year and stay 2 nights at least in our hotels and eat in our restaurants. And they just finished a tournament here a few weeks ago down at the Foothills Higher Education Center. The Grand National Cross Country Race at Steel Creek Park has approximately 6,000 plus spectators. That's also a televised race. A lot of people don't know about that. That's televised worldwide on the Versus Sports Network. So we have a presence worldwide on television. A lot of people don't know that. The Juara Open House had 1,200 visitors, and the Historic Morganton Festival, I'm sure, had 25,000 plus out-of-towners that came to that. The Waldensian Festival in Valdez, approximately 10,000 plus. At the Visitor Center, we publish a comprehensive visitor's guide, also Table Rock brochure, a Linville Gorge brochure, area map, several other pieces that fulfill the needs of our guests when they walk in and want information on the area. Some of the attractions, and I think this is, there's all kinds of attractions here, but these are a few that people always ask about. When they come in the Visitor Center, they're looking for our state parks. Where's the Pisgah National Forest, Linville Gorge, Linville Falls, where's Catawba Meadows Park, the Greenway, and the Blue Ridge Parkway. And we're working on better access and better signage for a lot of these places for the future. We have a lot of privately owned tourism attractions here, including 3 wineries that are actually located inside of Burke County. We have a couple others that are within a mile or 2 on the outside. Apple Hill Orchard is one of our biggest attractions in the fall down off Ignola Road. Do a supreme job with tourism there. They're growing. It's a real model for what I would like to see our other tourism attractions in the county take a look at as far as the business they do. The outdoor drama in Valdez from this day forward. The zip line, which did over 2,500 folks in less than 6 months back in the fall, late summer, early fall. The Steel Creek Park Campground and day use area. The Trail of Faith sees about 800 folks, and the Festival of Lights in Valdez had about 5,000 folks go through there recently. In 2011, the Tourism Development Authority will be supporting and developing new tourism businesses. This has been a need that's been here for a while, and now we finally have the money and the staff to do that. We'll also be implementing our marketing plan in the next 60 days using our Golden Leaf Grant, beginning the hospitality training program. And then I'm out talking to civic and government organizations on the economic tourism has in our community. The other thing that's important is to track tourism here. And we're going to be starting to do a better job of tracking the visitors that come here, the special events that come here. And so I think you'll see the TDA out and visible and trying to do a better job of representing and communicating tourism to our residents.
Ed, the second year of your 328 thousand is not going to be affected by the legislature freezing the money for next year?
No, from what we've heard, Golden Leaf already has that money in the bank for these grants. So the freeze that you're talking about, where they redirected the money, which hasn't been passed yet. I think it came out of committee, but that only occur in the next fiscal year. So, but it won't affect us.
Okay. Very good, thank you. Any questions of Ed?
The hospitality training, Ed, is that being received well?
We just started off with that. The difficulty with hospitality training, you have to recognize, is such a high turnover rate with those frontline folks. A lot of them are students and kids in school, and and they move up and move out and move around. But we think we've come up with a plan that we're going to be able to reach them through their employers and actually offer a sort of a mini school online course that they can take to learn about hospitality and how to be friendly with people. And with a waiter or waitress or a bartender, the more friendly you are, the better tips you're going to make. So it's an economic incentive there for them, plus some other incentives that we're going to offer. But it's based through the employer asking them to require their employees to participate in this, and it will be online.
The employers, are they recognizing the need?
Yes, they have. Yeah, they sure do.
I think it's interesting that we're talking about teaching people how to deal with people and be nice to people, and we're talking about an online course.
Yeah.
Well, somewhere in all that, people need to be able to communicate with each other.
That's very interesting, Sally. We had a hospitality committee meeting last week, and hospitality training's gone on for years and years and years over different methods. But the difficulty today is everybody's so busy. They're working or going to school or taking care of families, and so through this they'll be able to learn something online, and it will be real knowledge that they'll learn. So thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate it. Okay, under anyone else would like to come before the city council tonight that doesn't have anything on the agenda? All right, next, new business public hearing. I'll open the public hearing to consider a rezoning request submitted by Kevin Carlisle to rezone approximately 0.55 acres of property at 200 Berkmont Avenue from residential high to neighborhood business conditional use. Sally?
The property is at the intersection of Berkmont Avenue and Asheville Street and currently contains a vacant house. And the owner desires to utilize the property for a knitting shop in the future. And you have included in your packet the recommendation by the Planning Commission, which does include rezoning this property with 2 conditions that are listed for you there. And the advertisement was in the News Herald on January the 23rd and the 30th.
Thank you, Sally. Anyone in the audience would like to speak for or against? Close the public hearing. Council?
Motion to adopt an ordinance to rezone approximately 0.55 acres at 200 Berkmont Avenue from residential high to neighborhood business conditional use under the conditions stated.
Second.
Have a motion second. Any discussion?
I'd like to ask Kevin one question. There's a swimming pool that's leaning up against the house in question. Is that about to be removed?
We'd have to ask Steve, my brother, that, but, yes.
You do have some influence with him, I assume.
Well, he's my big brother, so.
Now, what about the fellow sitting beside you? Is he in favor? You are Ralph, right?
I'm fine with it.
Okay, very good.
Okay. Anyone else? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next item, public hearing to consider an amendment to the Morganton sign ordinance to allow certain off-premises signage to be replaced with digital off-premise signage under certain conditions and criteria. Sally?
This is in order for us to better be able to react to the advent of digital advertising and digital signs, something that our ordinance really wasn't set up necessarily to accommodate. This too has gone before the Planning Commission and been discussed, and you have a lot of material included from that meeting in your packet. What you're looking at tonight is really a combination of the staff and the planning and zoning recommendations, which allow you to recognize that digital signs do exist, and basically, in a nutshell, allows a digital sign to be installed at a location within the city in exchange for removing 4 non-conforming signs that exist at other locations within the city. There are some restrictions on the digital sign dealing with flashing and how long a message has to be static for before it can change. This would require those allow those non-conforming signs to come down with no compensation required from the city in the trade out. You have before you at your place a map. It's a very colorful map that points these out. So if you'll look at the dots, basically what would be happening is that you would be getting rid of 4 orange dots for 1 green dot. And Lee is here if you have any specific questions or would like any of that addressed additionally.
Bill, you were there too. If you want to say anything, you're welcome to say something. You worked diligently on that committee. We appreciate your effort. Bill Lennon. Lee, you got anything you want?
I'll be happy to answer any questions.
The signs that we're talking about are the biggies.
Yes.
Portable ones.
These are billboard issues.
Billboard, okay.
Gentleman's here. Okay, if you want, you don't need to say anything unless you really want to.
No, unless you guys have any questions. I'm Jamie Mahkout. I'm the Vice President General.
Okay, yeah, go ahead and tell us your name and where you reside, if you would, and who you're with.
My name is Jamie Mahkout. I am the Vice President and General Manager of Lamar Advertising. I reside Hickory, North Carolina. Our office is in Granite Falls, and we operate a majority of the billboards inside the city limits of Morganton. And I would just like to express support for the amendment as written, and if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them as well.
How many counties are you responsible for?
About 26.
26.
We run from here. This is the westernmost part, and we go all the way to Burlington and up to Mount Airy and everywhere in between. About 1,500 faces in particular.
1,500. Okay.
And we operate 18 digital billboards out of that 1,500. It's about 1% of our business.
How fast are you replacing?
How fast do we replace?
Putting them up, and taking them out?
We started this 5 years ago, so we have 18 in 5 years, probably 3 to 4 a year. It depends. It's never going to be. The technology is fantastic. The cost is prohibitive. They don't all qualify. There's only 14, I believe, dots on your map that would even qualify for something like this, and that doesn't mean all 14 would ever be like that. But there's a lot of other issues that have to go completely right for me to be able to put one in the ground. So we're thankful for the opportunity if you guys could see it in your purview to pass the ordinance.
Do you hook up to electricity or are they solar?
Electricity for now.
No solar.
We've installed solar panels in Florida as a test. We actually did the entire state of Florida on all of our billboards to try and put more energy back into the system than we're getting. And that was partially through a grant with the Florida Department of Transportation. I think Lamar put up $2 million and the state put up $8 million. And we are constantly trying to green the product. The product is half as much as it was when we installed the first one 5 years ago as far as weight, as far as kilowatt usage and things like that. It's constantly getting greener. And you don't have any emissions as well from people riding in a truck and putting up a recyclable material, but it's literally done with a computer just like this.
How big is Lamar?
Lamar is the 3rd largest billboard company in the country, based out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, formed in 1902, so about 110 years old now. And we are a heck of a lot more like Morganton than Minneapolis. We are middle America through and through. We're a small town, and the size of what we do, 92% of my business is local. Ben is a customer of ours here tonight. We are a lot more like Benjamin than we are like Bloomingdale's. And, proud of that fact as well.
Very good. Any questions of him?
Yeah.
Sir?
I'm assuming that a digital sign would be quite a bit more revenue for your company than the existing just structured signs? Is that
It would be
basically?
in a smaller area or a smaller city, and the unit we're talking about is you said the bigger signs, but the smaller ones that you see in town, not so much the interstate. You give us the right to go out to the interstate if we had to, but we'd have to adhere to the 300-foot limit that you guys have on the size. It is more revenue, but there's more cost involved in it as well. It's usually costlier. We try to, there's a benefit all the way around for us, but also for our advertisers. It's a very inexpensive form of advertising for them to be able to change their message without any production cost. They could change it with going further into social media as their Facebook changes and run advertisements immediately. And also on the city portion of things, we, public service-wise, we talked about the fire that we had at a plant here about 5 or 6 years ago. That's something we put up automatically. We do Amber Alerts. We're tied into the Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Whenever one is issued in North Carolina, it's there. Actually, I've talked to people in Quantico, Virginia, when the FBI will call. So it is absolutely more lucrative for us to put them up, but it is. I support what's in front of you, but it was a hard number to swallow with 4 to take down, 4 structures to do so. So we're given a whole lot of pain to take something down, but we'd love to take the step forward with the city.
What is the size of the
Roughly the same size as, I guess you're probably all familiar with the board that we call it the wash house, where Benjamin has his advertisement pretty much year round. And the ones that are right up here on 181, kind of at the intersection of Walmart, that size, about 10 feet by 22 feet.
Okay.
The standard size like that, so a good deal less than 300 square feet. The general poster panel size, and that's something in town.
Very good. Any other questions?
When you say digital, do you mean that it constantly changes?
It changes every 8 seconds per NCDOT standards, every 8 seconds. It does not change as a television station, or it does not scroll, flash, or have any intermittent light. It changes so fast, faster than you blink your eye, it never loses ambient light. It's more like a PowerPoint presentation than pretty much anything. And it stays solid for 8 seconds and goes to the next advertiser. As a company rule, we don't ever sell to any more than 6 advertisers at one time. Their ad's shown about 1,700 times a day for that, and it can change. If there's 3 advertisers on it, every 24 seconds somebody different will be there. But 8 seconds is an eternity for a billboard. I wish I had 1,500 billboards with 8-second reads.
Thanks, sir. Any other questions?
Thank you all very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I'll make the motion to adopt an ordinance amending the city's sign ordinance that allows certain off-premises signs to be replaced with digital off-premises signage under conditions and criteria.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I got a couple
Okay.
things to ask about it. I'm assuming that the digital signs are going to be considered to be off-premise signs also, aren't they?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Replacement. Well, reading through the material here, I noticed that on October the 1st of 2006, the council passed an ordinance that prohibited off-premise signs. And now we're being asked to replace some of those with, again, off-premise signs. So I wonder, really, in a way, why are we considering this? Because we have an ordinance against it. I realize the fact that we're going to be eliminating some of these signs as a result of replacing those signs with the new digital signs, but how are we getting around the fact that we got an ordinance against this?
This is an ordinance amendment that specifically allows it. So in this case, the ordinance will not disallow the new the new digital sign. I'm not sure I understand your question, I guess.
Okay, we got an ordinance that says that.
But we're amending that ordinance to
Okay.
specifically allow that.
Okay.
This is a recommendation to actually change that.
Okay. Does the city receive any revenue from the off-premises signs?
No.
No.
Then, what's the benefit of this gonna be to the city? Because the previous council, not this council, but the previous council, thought that it is necessary to have an ordinance against off-premises signs.
I think we were talking about billboards, actually what I'd call a freestanding billboard. You paste over one thing one month and you paste back over the next month. I think that's what we were talking about. I think far as the benefit is for merchants in the city to be able to advertise, which is a big thing to them. The city might not get anything from it, other than the fact that it helps businesses to be able to advertise their wares and hopefully make sales and these kinds of things. That's my perspective on it. It's another tool that a business can use in order to prosper their business.
You're taking 4 down for one digital, is that true?
4 structures, they could have 2 sides on them or one side, but 4 whole structures to erect one panel face of the digital, correct?
Right.
And I believe when we passed this ordinance that you're speaking of, Forrest, the thought process behind it was we weren't going to allow any new ones. As the old ones deteriorated, they went away and they could not be replaced. Is that true, Lee?
Well, I guess that's kind of the crux of the issue, is the old billboards, and we have billboards in our jurisdiction that are probably 40 years old or even older. A lot of those are orange dots on your map. They're non-conforming. They didn't meet the standards. And in 1996, we required that the city council sitting at that time did what's called an amortization and asked that all those billboards be removed. Orange dots should be removed. There's a little quirk, though, in that requirement, in that when you ask billboard companies to remove non-conforming signs, you have to reimburse billboard companies to get rid of those signs. That's from our friend Lady Bird Johnson back in the 50s, which predates me.
Not by much.
Not by much. But
Actually, 60s.
that basically, a billboard's, there's not a whole lot to them. You replace a few panels, stick up a new pole, and you've got repaired billboard that will last another 100 years. This ordinance sets up basically an exchange incentive to help us get rid of some of those old billboards that are maybe in neighborhoods or too close to the road. A lot of reasons that they're non-conforming, too big, that we don't have money necessarily to go pay the billboard company to take them down. But if they can put up this new technology on the ones that we thought were conforming, they're far enough away from a residence, they're far enough off the road, they're within the size requirements, letting them just change the panel to a digital sign, the billboard's not going anywhere. The billboard's going to be there for a long, long time. What it does is it allows them to put in a new technology panel in exchange for getting rid of some of the stuff that we've asked to get rid of 15 years ago, but can't afford to remove. So it's kind of a win-win. The billboard wins by getting a new product. Businesses win by getting more opportunity to advertise their thing in a more visible location, maybe at a better price. And we win as a regulatory agency to get rid of some of the things that back in 1996 we said we'd like to get rid of. So really it's a positive, I think, on both sides, and it was a rare opportunity to actually accomplish both sides of the argument, which doesn't happen very often in my world. So it was a kind of a nice thing. Hopefully that explains it.
It would appear to me, though, Lee, that if we're doing this as a courtesy, then why would we be required to pay for the removal of them if we have an ordinance against it?
I believe we had a little state involvement in this, didn't we? Some lobbying effort.
Well, it's a federal law. It's a federal law along.
Well, there are actually some state laws that
there's some
take
state
care of that,
requirements
address
also,
that
but,
issue too now.
So we're kind of in a position where we'd love to see them gone, but we don't have the money to see them gone. So,
It's kind of like your
It's a-
mother-in-law, glad to see her come, but glad to see her leave.
It's a lot like the discussion that we had months back about nuisances and properties that get into a total state of disarray. And if you can, have some kind of regulation to cause that to be taken care of, the challenge with that becomes the dollars that are required to do that.
Any further questions of Lee?
And I think there are 18 green dots.
30-some odd orange dots. Okay, make a motion to adopt an ordinance.
No, we,
Go ahead, motion.
Dr.
Oh,
Hammers
Dr.
made the
Hammers.
motion and John seconded it.
Seconded.
Okay. All right, any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Okay. Consideration of an engineering service agreement with Black & Veatch International Company for wastewater plant design. Sally?
This is the action item for the presentation that we got tonight, the update on where that project stands. And this is for the Phase 3 work that they will begin working on now. $873,226. And again, when we borrow this money, that money will get paid back to us. And we'll start paying debt on the new money.
Make a motion to approve engineering service agreement with Black & Veatch International Company for design services for Phase 3 regulatory compliance project. This project is for $873,226.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Consideration of amended lease for Yanni's Family Restaurant, Sally.
Okay. You will recall that recently we awarded one of our Main Street Solutions grants to Yanni's Family Restaurant in the form of the loan that we have made available to several downtown businesses with some Main Street grant money. The purpose of that loan, that grant to Yanni, was for him to be able to build a covered deck on the back of the restaurant property. As that has occurred, and also some interior upfit and some improvements that he has made to the facility that he's in relationship to that, he has asked that we look at amending his current lease agreement. And what you have before you tonight is a lease agreement that would indeed do that. It amends the term, it amends the rates to match them to the new term being considered, and also establishes in the amended lease that it's very clear in there that the deck that is constructed becomes the property of the city should Yanni either vacate the premises prior to the end of this lease, or the lease should expire. And that's one of the things that's pretty important to get taken care of now that that is an additional improvement to the property. You have before you, and Steve gave you a copy tonight of the amended lease. You can see the line changes in there. And if you would look on page 3 of that document, you will see the monthly payment terms as they go through the entire term of the lease.
The first copy that I sent out had an error in it, in that we simply omitted part of a year in our schedule of lease payments. And the one I've laid before you tonight, I think I've laid it before everybody, just added, in 2017, I just omitted
Only had 4
7 months. And so we've gone back and corrected that. We caught that today. And we corrected that.
I'd like to thank Sally, Steve, and Larry for doing their hard work on this lease.
It's the time to make the motion. I'll do it. Motion to approve an amendment and restated lease agreement between the City of Morganton and Yanni's Family Restaurant Incorporated, dated February the 7th, 2011.
I would state,
yeah.
just for the record, that because of the length of the extension of the lease, we had to advertise it in the newspaper in the same manner if we'd sold real property. And we have to give the public 10 days to come in, and if somebody else had wanted to approach the city about leasing the property and at a higher rent amount or whatever, they would have had the opportunity. It's called an upset bid, just like you would on sale of property. We advertised it. There's been no interest, and there's not been obviously an upset bid, or we'd have that before you instead of this one. So there's not been any kind of upset bid or counter proposal by anyone else regarding this property.
And that advertisement was on January the 27th.
Yeah, and we had a motion, but we don't have a second. Just so you'll know, Mayor.
But I'd like to also say Sally was real helpful. Steve and I were discussing this, especially about some of the tax issues and these kinds of things with the lease and the amount of money involved in it. She's done a good job with us on it.
We need a second.
Second.
Have a second.
Who made it?
Larry.
Larry. Okay.
Yeah. Any discussion?
Yeah. I'd feel a little bit more comfortable with the lease agreement. The third portion of the estates that, and Sally went over this, the amended lease makes it clear that the deck constructed by Yannis becomes the property of all the city whenever the lease expires or whenever he vacates the premises. So I'm not an attorney, but I'm just going by what I'm reading here. So the deck becomes the property of the city when one or two things happens: when the lease expires or Yanni vacates the premises. I would think that a little different wording on that I'd be more comfortable with if it read such as, upon completion of the construction of the deck, it becomes a part of the current restaurant building and owned by the city of Morganton. I think that would be a little bit more specific. The way I read it here now, it doesn't become the city's property unless the lease expires or Yanni vacates premises. Now,
But he can't
that's
take
the
it
way I
with
read
him.
it. Huh?
He can't take it with him.
That's a standard provision about leasehold improvements that you will find in generic leases all over the town. One of the issues here, though, is that I'm always concerned about liability, and I'd rather for it, personally, not to be ours until he's no longer there. Now, that's just me from a liability standpoint. I'm not sure we've avoided liability anyway if something happens there, because it's our building and it's our lease, but I guess I would prefer legally that Yanni be on the hook because it's still his deck, plainly put.
Well, don't you address liability in the lease anyway?
Well, he has to provide insurance,
is.
liability insurance, and it has to name us name the city as an additional insured under the policy.
But our pockets is probably deeper.
Well, they're gonna go after everybody.
Yeah.
If somebody happens, some accident happens involving a deck, they're going after everybody.
But we got deeper pockets.
Okay, back
We do
to the leasehold improvements. You addressed in the memo to us about leasehold improvements and property taxes, personal property taxes, business personal property taxes on leasehold improvements. But you didn't know for sure how the county would react to this. Is that still the?
That's still true. City-owned property is exempt from taxes, from property taxes.
Property taxes. And that's by a state law.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
The issue, and it's a very technical issue about what happens if the property is improved by a tenant, but it's to exempt property. And Burke County has the right to go in and take a look at those improvements, and if it deems them to have substantial value, to assess them for taxes for leasehold improvements. They haven't so far, but the county could put a value on the leasehold improvements and on the leasehold itself. I don't want to get into technical legal terms there, but if that happens, if the county decides to do that, then this deck would be evaluated for their purposes as a part of those leasehold improvements. And Yanni has to pay the taxes. And not only that, he has to pay the city's corresponding share of the taxes that we would have collected if the county elects to do that in its discretion. I'm not sure whether the county tax appraiser will do it or not, but he can. He has the authority to.
Like everything else, whatever the county assesses as the value, they would send over to us, and we would issue a bill for the same value.
Okay. Now, why 20 years? There was some talk in some of this about Yanni being able to recover his investment on this. Is that what's basically behind the 20 years, Mel?
Sure, I'm going to answer that.
Kara, 20 years, the length of the lease?
Under the loan agreement, he pays for 5 years and the balance of the loan is forgiven at the end of 60 months.
Right.
That's unrelated to allowing him to recover the cost of investing in leasehold improvements, including this deck. Very little. Under tax laws, didn't realize it at the time, there is apparently an exception made for 2 years, 2010 and 2011, that allows you to expense leasehold improvements for these 2 years. So he actually gets to write off the cost, his cost, not the loan, has nothing to do with the loan. It's his cost of constructing the deck. He gets to write that off as an expense. He gets to expense that
income tax
rather than
Income
depreciating
tax.
for federal and state income tax.
It's based on if he needs, I guess, certain amounts. I don't
Right.
know how that works, right?
Right. Well,
It's based on how much.
he has spent, right, he can write that off over the 2 years, which is an advantage if he's making money, which we assume that he is.
He requested 20
Right.
years.
Well, the real estate advisor that I spoke to about this has normally a food service industry concern would normally ask for a lease of 10 to 15 years. Now, in our case, if we have this tied up for 20 years, there's some pluses and minuses. It gives us 20 years of revenue that we know about. And also, it takes away our ability to tax that property for 20 years unless we get a little pittance from the leasehold improvements. But it may also decrease our ability to sell this property in case future councils may decide we want to sell it, or to the McGempsey's or someone else. Pluses and minuses that I think we should at least think about. And, and I believe in Sharon's first presentations about the reason for having the deck and making all the exceptions and redoing some ordinances, and you indicated that this was going to bring in a lot more business downtown, that we were going to have quite a few new jobs, 7 new jobs or something to that effect. That all says to me that there's going to be additional revenue there because of the additional business. It should be. So there should not be a need for 20 years. Now, we had a lease agreement that there's what, 2 more years and then
Year and a half, year and a half.
and 5 years.
2020.
So what's wrong with that?
He requested 20.
Okay. Okay. We won't know about the taxes and the leasehold improvements until, you don't have any ideas, do you, Steve?
No.
Okay.
I know Danny's made Danny, the county tax supervisor, has made inquiry about our understanding of whether there's a leasehold there that it could be, could have a value placed on it and be taxed. I've not responded to him yet, but I suspect that his interpretation of the law that I would agree with his opinion about that. So he's aware of it. I don't know whether he intends to move on it or not. We simply got to.
I guess that would go if it gets, if Yanni were to list it in tax listing right now, and if not, if Danny is to go and look at that and do a discovery or whatever that process is for that.
Well, I guess just going back to the simple matter I brought up to start with, just doesn't make a lot of sense to me that we've got a deck on the back of a city-owned building that, for all practical purposes, we don't own, and we're not going to own it unless one of these two things that I just talked about happens. Just, to me, don't make a whole lot of sense. I think if it's anything's attached to a city-owned building or piece of property, then it makes sense to me that the city should own it.
How do you want Forrest to handle that?
Well, I would just say to amend this third provision here in the manner that I stated would make more sense to me.
It's still gonna be the cities anyway we go, right, Steve?
Well,
Ultimately, it's going to be ours.
based on what that number 3 is, though, it's
I think
questionable.
Steve's argument is if anything were to happen in the meantime, that we would at least have an opportunity, I'm junior attorney in now, to make an argument that we are not responsible.
You get it. Well, that's
Or
one
liable.
thing. That's the thing that
Or
bothers.
liable, and that's
thing
what
that bo-
bothers me.
The thing that that's the thing that bothers me, because I'm worried about liability, and I've told you all along that I'm worried about liability there. The other thing is that the way I've handled leasehold improvements in this lease is the same way that 98% of all leases that are prepared anywhere, anytime, handle leasehold improvements, and that is the leasehold improvements remain the property of the tenant until such time as he is no longer the tenant. And
This is
at
pretty
that
standard,
time-
what we've always done.
That's right. Now, there are some things that he gets to take with him. Equipment that can be detached from the premises that don't do damage to the removals, not permanently attached in some permanent fashion. That's not a leasehold improvement, that's equipment. He gets to take that stuff. Now, this lease deals with that because it's uniquely a restaurant. We have the right of first refusal to buy that stuff at the time that he quits the premises. But I've handled this just like I would handle all the other leases that I've ever handled. But I mean, if you all want to change it, we can change it. That's not an issue. But I've simply handled it the boilerplate way. The only difference is this: instead of calling it leasehold improvements in general, I have said leasehold improvements, comma, including the deck, to make it sure that everybody understands that we are considering the deck as a leasehold improvement at the present time.
To our building.
Yeah, it's to our building, yeah.
Then that
But it's a
will-
leasehold improvement, because just like a tile floor in the bathroom is a leasehold improvement, and he can't take that up and take it with him. That becomes ours. But that's understood to be that from the very beginning. because of the nature that that tile is attached to the building floor. But this deck happens to be a freestanding deck because of its design. And while it's attached through the doorway, as Mel would say, it's cantilevered, and it's not permanently attached to the exterior wall because the wall apparently couldn't support the structure. So except for the passageway, this is actually a freestanding structure that's there.
Attached by the doorway.
Doorway.
But that's attachment.
Yeah.
I mean, what
Attached.
if you were renting a house, the city has a house out in Carbon City, and somebody rented it and put a garage and attached it to the siding, wood siding of the home, a garage, and they decided to leave.
That garage becomes ours because it's permanently attached.
When they leave.
Can't be removed without causing damage. Same way with a heat pump well, the heat pump outside unit may not be. You get into
Do the ductwork.
to argue, but the heating system
right.
itself, if somebody replaced a heating system inside a house that was rented, that would be a leasehold improvement, and you can't remove the heating system when you vacate the premises.
It's basically making an improvement for the landlord.
That's right.
Well, it looks to me like this could be construed by the general public as the city not wanting to take any responsibility for the deck that we've approved that went on the back of this restaurant.
We've got responsibility for it. Have we not, Steve?
Well, we do have responsibility because we approved it.
Right.
And we inspected it and the whole 9 yards.
Then let's claim it.
If you all want to claim it, you tell me. It's y'all's decision.
Is it-
I've told you how lawyers handle this. If you want to do it differently, tell me and I'll do it differently.
That washes out the tax part of it. There'll be
Is it
no
verbal
taxes
that you
involved
want?
in it if we do that.
Forrest, I hear what you're saying, but you're overlooking the revenue.
Yeah, the
side.
revenue's gonna be gone.
It's gonna be a pittance, but I think in next budget year.
I'm not opposed to this. The only thing that I think needs to be cleared up is its responsibility that I feel the city should take for the deck, which is
How would you
attached to the
change
building.
that, Steve?
I mean,
Oh, I'll have to rewrite it and say that,
if all the
that,
rest of you want to not take
upon the city's
responsibility
issuance
for it,
of a certificate of occupancy,
That's
that he gives the deck to us. I'll have to write some language in there to that effect.
We can pass it on that contingent?
I don't know what that does to his tax liability.
We're gonna,
If he gives it to us, I don't know whether he gets to expense it and write it
Yeah, I
off.
don't know
or
what that
not.
does
I
to
don't
his
know.
income
I'm
tax
not a
liability.
lawyer.
That'll be
we,
an
we may be
interesting
doing
question.
something here detrimental to this whole thing.
I don't know
By
that.
doing that.
So, I'm not a tax lawyer, so.
I think I'd be opposed to trying to do that. We're gonna lose our tax out of it if it ever comes to that too, will we not?
I would think so,
I truthfully don't know what that does to his income tax
We may open
situation with that. That'd be between him and his
Right,
landlord.
and,
Revisit
I mean,
it.
him and his accountant.
and golly.
are you saying that
I
it's
think we're
gonna
fighting
affect the
over
amount of
gnats
tax
here.
that you
Yeah.
pay?
Oh, yeah.
And that's what I
splitting hairs.
think, you all are fighting over gnats.
Well,
We're trying to swallow a mountain and spit out a gnat, I guess.
Let's leave it like it
Well,
is.
Let's just move on.
I'll say before we even vote, I don't agree with the 20-year lease. Now, I can go I prefer to go with Steve and just the way that it's normally done than insist that it becomes, because it, as Larry says, it's ours anyway.
Yeah.
So, I don't
It's
think
ours
we.
anyway if the lease agreement expires or if he vacates the premises, it'll be ours.
He could drop dead.
But before then, it's not gonna be ours.
It,
All right,
it
let's
ain't
move on.
gonna
We
be
have a
ours
motion.
in my lifetime, Forrest, so.
Yeah,
I've given up on that. You know, you guys have beat me every time I've turned around on it, so
Don't do anything different now.
We don't mess up the deal.
Yeah, we've got a record, and
Maybe
All right.
I was
maybe it's not a
accused.
big issue.
I was accused of voting for it back in December, but the citizen was wrong.
All right, we've got a motion, we've got a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
Or not.
All right, it's 3-2.
3-2.
All right, next item. Consideration to rescind privilege license ordinance 10-21 and to rescind the amended privilege license schedule. Sally?
You all have indicated over the last several weeks your intention to rescind the action that was taken in December, and that is actually the ordinance before you tonight. Basically sets everything back to July of 2010.
Okay, gentlemen, you gotta look at two motions.
Yeah, there are two things, because you would need to rescind the ordinance and then also rescind the amendment to the fees and charges. Two separate actions.
And in this, the contract is also
Yes, void.
voided.
As I put in the agenda summary, the contract, as it's stated in there, is voided. That portion of the contract that deals with privilege license is voided. There's been
Okay.
discussion with him, and he's agreed to that, as my understanding.
That part of the contract, yes.
That part of the contract.
Julie, for your benefit, because Steve, of course, requests that there be, and there needs to be some discussion, of course. Let me give some indication, because there's some people in here that are going to be doing some hard work for us over the next coming months, not months, weeks. And they came tonight to see where we were at, I guess. And what I would like to say is that we will, what happened last week of the New Year's, the letters went out, if I'm not mistaken, New Year's week. They went out to all the businesses. And my phone started ringing. And the magnitude of the industrial customers, of course, I listened to everybody and some retail, and felt like there was something wrong. And so my bookkeeper and I put some numbers to it on the way back from Chapel Hill New Year's Eve day, and I had a great concern. And Sally called me up to asked me how my trip was, and which I appreciate, Sally. But then she got an earful of the problems that I had encountered from telephone calls, and told her that we needed to do some soul searching on it and revisiting. That it was entirely too high a figure that we were looking at. And she agreed immediately. And so we knew we were going to revisit it, and I had some ideas. Sally had ideas. We had some ideas of how to revisit it. And I made those comments in the very beginning of the city council meeting in January. And opened up the meeting, did the business, and called a little hearing that we had. It wasn't a public hearing because it wasn't advertised. So we did graciously let everybody speak that needed to speak, and we listened to all the comments and didn't make a decision that night. But basically afterwards, and by the way, I do, Julie, talk to my city council members because I live in Morganton, and I see most all of them. I talked to each one. I talked to John coming down the mountain from Asheville in a heavy fog, and but anyway, we decided that we would leave it alone.
I was in the fog.
I was in the fog. Yeah, we decided we would leave the privilege license fee alone. It wasn't the time, and I don't know when the time will be because Burke County is hurting, and since then, believe it or not, I've had some phone calls from some of the same people. that say that they are interested in helping the city out, and why not in the future revisit it, but do it in a meager way. And there are all kinds of different scenarios. Lenore does it by industrial privilege license fees by people. If you have 200 people in a plant, you pay by the people. And I don't know how honest that is. Maybe it's honest or not. I don't know. But anyway, we're not going to deal with it. And it's over, and we're going to depend upon some great suggestions from our citizenry, which we have never done. And in the past, other than a public hearing here, we get recommendations, and my telephone rings constantly with recommendations from people on various issues. So we're going to be dealing with that over the coming weeks of getting ideas from citizens, whether they be Burke County citizens or Morganton citizens. They're all Burke County citizens. That's where we're at. That's my discussion. Anyone else?
Very good.
Put it to bed.
Put it to bed.
We beat it to death.
Okay.
Let's put it to bed.
I'll do one. Motion to adopt a ordinance rescinding ordinance number 1021 entitled an ordinance amending the privilege license tax ordinance to provide the taxes to be levied on the basis of gross receipts for certain businesses.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion of that? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next one.
Okay, I'll make the motion to rescind the amended privilege license fee schedule for the purpose of leveling of a gross receipts tax on certain businesses, and to confirm the privilege license fee schedule in effect on December 6, 2010.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion second. Now, let me forget where I'm at, Steve. Let me also say that I'm in the middle of 15 or so State of the City addresses, and yesterday I went to John's church, and he was surprised as I was when I came out of a Sunday school class after giving it at the First Baptist Church to a Huffman Sunday school class, and it's become a very easy thing to talk about is our state of our city. And although our financial state is in good shape, we are actively on a daily basis losing revenues. Our sales tax revenues are dwindling. People are still going, as Ben knows, and Ben's tried his best and doing a great job of keeping people here to buy men and women's clothes and livers in his store, but people still go to Asheville, Charlotte, and Hickory. Possibility of the legislature grabbing our franchise tax any day that they're in Raleigh. The only time I don't worry about them is when they're on their way home on Friday. And the franchise tax means how much to us, Sally?
It's about $1.5 million a year. It equals to 12 cents on our tax
12
rate.
cents on our tax rate in the city of Morganton. And it has been rumored that that could be on the chopping block, that the legislature will take that from cities. And, you know, that could be devastating. But for every town. But I don't like to be in that kind of company. We're between a rock and a hard place. You know, being an elected official in these times, the only guy that's having any fun is the mayor of Mooresville.
He got called.
But we are not. We don't know where we're going from here. That's why we're dependent upon a lot of people. And so anyway, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next item. Consideration of a grant application to Recreational Trails Program administered by the Department of Transportation for the resurfacing of Section 1 of the Catawba River Greenway. Sally.
We are always, as staff members, looking for grant opportunities and ways to leverage dollars. We are looking at more of those these days that don't have a local match with them. This is one of those opportunities. The first section of the Greenway really needs to be resurfaced and repaved. And we have found an opportunity to get some of that paid for. We are asking to apply for $75,000. There is a match required, 25%. That would be met with city labor and city crews and some of our design services for inspections and what's required for that. So it would be no additional cash dollars for us. The total amount of the project is $93,906, and the deadline to apply is February 21st.
And this, again, is something that I mentioned on the State of the City address. This is not involved. This is on top of the cake right here. But our staff has done a great job of receiving grants, whether it be Main Street or whether it be community development or whoever. I mean, we are out there digging for private and public, state and federal grants to help us out, so we do a great job in that.
I move we approve submit this application by February 21st, 2011.
Second.
Have a motion second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Consideration of appointment by the City Council of one person to the Human Relations Commission. I would like to nominate Grace Norton.
Second.
Have a second. Any further nominations from anyone?
Move the nomination be closed.
All in favor of Ms. Norton, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next item is consideration of appointment by the council of two people to the Fireman's Relief Fund Board, and those are Danny Lingerfeld and Mark Bradshaw.
Second.
All in favor?
Who made the motion?
Larry.
He made the
Larry.
motion.
Okay.
John?
No.
Oh, okay.
Larry.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor of those two gentlemen, say aye.
Aye.
Consideration of appointment by the mayor of two people to the Morganton Housing Authority, and I'd like to reappoint Teresa Dehart and Brian Black to 5-year terms. And Sally, you've got something on your agenda.
I do. We have one item that was put at your places tonight, and the Main Street Solutions Grant. We are still working hard to give that money away in the loan part of that, and really hoping that we get to spend all of that money in Morganton and not give any of it back to the state. This may be our last opportunity, because with a $3.7 billion shortfall that they are facing, this grant program may not be available next year. We have yet again had someone that was looking to do a business decide not to pursue that, and so we have some existing dollars to reallocate. Kayla is a craft gallery that is currently located in Lenore and do high quality arts, crafts, and the artists who actually create that are on site and working. They are moving into 100 West Union Street, and we are asking that you consider awarding a loan of $10,000 toward the upfit of that property. This would work exactly the same as the other loans. They would make the repayments over the 5-year period, continue to operate for up to the 5 years in order to get the 75% of the loan forgiven.
So moved.
Okay, we have the motion.
Second.
We have the second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Anything else, Sally?
No,
Any
that's
from council members? Meeting's adjourned.